at 9 a.m. We'll have an adoption of the agenda. Motion, please.
Motion to adopt. Yeah.
Motion made, second.
Second.
Thank you. The approval of the October regular meeting minutes from October. I've read them. I've seen no corrections.
Okay. You want to go around? He's all sworn in.
All right. Welcome, Larry.
So I'm late.
Well, you had to get sworn in. Here you go, right over here.
Oh, yeah. So let me go.
All right. Well, we just called the meeting to order and adopted the agenda, which is right on the top here. And we're going to approve these minutes that you weren't even here for. So.
But I will phone if you do.
Okay. I've seen nothing wrong with these minutes.
I don't either. You make motion that we approve.
Motion by Mr. Patton, second John Hoffman. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Well, let's welcome Larry Tyner. Larry, you want to give a little brief history for the rest of the folks of your
My background?
Your background on.
I was employed 30 years by a Weyerhaeuser company, and then my job was being a regional public affairs manager for several states to represent Weyerhaeuser company before government and to the people. So that's my longest experience, anything. I've served on president of Mississippi Forestry Association. I was president of Palmer Home for Children, and I'm just glad to be and honored to be on this board.
Well, we're glad to have you, and we love people who have a public service background or a lot of public awareness background, and Weyerhaeuser would certainly give you that.
Excuse me, are you year-round up there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Where do you live just like there?
I live on St. Andrews Road, by the cemetery, across the street. Quietest neighbors I've ever had.
See, you bought
Ms. Bailey.
Mark Bailey's house?
Yes,
Oh, yeah, you know there was an airplane built in that house?
I'm beside Grumpy. You know Grumpy?
Yeah,
My house is right next to Grumpy.
yeah, there was there.
Well,
I
that
think there was
basement's got a lot of history.
Yeah, it does.
I'll never forget
I
seeing
think there
an
was 2
airplane.
airplanes built in that house.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, I
One
know it was-
biplane and one mono?
One by wing.
Yeah.
I helped put the wings on the bi-wing over in Elizabeth.
Oh, in Marge's house?
Yeah. No, we did it over at the airport, but they were rebuilt in the basement there.
Yeah.
Back to the meeting though. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Preston for nomination, selection of officers.
All right, yeah, every year we have to nominate officers for the planning board. Basically, we need a chairman and a vice chairman. Pete has been serving as the chair, and then Mr. Hoffman here has been serving as the vice chair. What we need is either a nomination or a volunteer to either continue or to be a chairman. And then we'll take a vote on each of those positions and move forward. So are there any nominations or volunteers to be the chair?
I would like to re-nominate Pete again. I think he's done a good job.
All right,
Second up.
all right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I appreciate it, gentlemen.
So Mr. Chamberlain will be our chair again this year, a vice chairman. Any nominations or volunteers?
John, would you like to do it again?
Second the motion.
All right, John Hoffman is nominated and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that takes care of that. We have Mr. Pete Chamberlain as our chairman and Mr. John Hoffman as the vice chair. Thank you, and I'll give it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Preston. Old business is next, and an update on the address posting project.
Yes, that's me again. The address posting, we've got the officers out surveying that, resurveying. I did want to let you know that we'll probably start sending out letters here shortly. I talked to the chief, and my estimate was maybe 75% of noncompliance, but in talking to the chief, there may be a higher rate. So what might be good is, we've done a lot prior to this to get the word out and let everybody know to look at that, but it doesn't seem to have caught on. So any word you can spread to say, hey, this is, because we're going to look at probably sending out several hundred violation letters to property owners on the mountain. And as you know, when we did this before, we had close to 1,000, I think, that were not in compliance. So it's possible that we have that many or more this time. So I guess what I would say to you is spread the word, because that's going to people are going to be upset obviously when they get those letters. But,
Okay, now,
With this, pardon me, go ahead, Peter.
let me get this straight. This is for the post in the yard displaying your house number.
yes, it is. It's not required to be in the yard, but there are certain requirements in the zoning ordinance that require it to be visible from the street from both directions, at least 3 inches high, and be reflective.
So what about mailbox numbers and house numbers that are on the front of houses already? Is that-
If they're reflective and they're 3 inches and they're visible, then they're fine. If
Okay.
they're not, that's where the issue's going to come in.
Okay,
Or if they're only on one side of the mailbox, or if you can't see it from coming in one direction or something like that. So
However, the mailbox has to be on the property side,
yeah,
not across the street.
right.
I was gonna bring that up, I just found one in my neighborhood, guy put brand new, looked like 3-inch letters, on his mailbox, looks great, mailbox.
just on the wrong side of the road, yeah. So, we sent out quite a few, letters to the people that we knew were in violation already. We sent them a couple of letters, and then, we had that flyer in the utility bill. We did a lot,
Right.
but
Okay,
Then
now,
again-
The violation letter, pardon me, go ahead, Peter.
I was just gonna comment on the mailboxes again.
mhm.
Is there not a standard regulation for mailboxes? Does it say that you can put them across the street, or are they supposed to be on your property?
I mean,
Go ahead.
Because I ran into that, it's where the mailman says he wants it. Because it depends on what side of the street he goes down, that's his mailbox, not yours.
And that's generally what
He
we tell
also,
people.
he also gets to direct the height.
Right, I knew.
Yeah, he has the height and everything like that, he can come out and measure, I put one in for somebody one time, and it was 2 inches too high.
Okay.
And then we dig it back up and put it back in the ground.
Okay,
But it's up to him where it goes, because it depends on what side of the street he goes down when he's driving his car and where you are.
would it be to our interest to put in this letter that if you have a mailbox and you want to use your mailbox is legally height, and you've got 3-inch numbers and they're reflective, but if it is on the wrong side of the road, you need to move it back to your side of the road for it to be legal in a R.
Or they can
The
put up a
numbers have to be
post.
The post has to be moved, the mailbox, yeah.
They-
Right.
The mailbox may be in a position where the mailman wants it. We don't really get involved with where that location is.
Okay,
But if it's on the opposite side of the street or not on their property or something, they can just have a post, like a 4x4 or something, and put an address number on that. It doesn't have to be on the mailbox. The mailbox is probably the most convenient if it's on your side of the street.
okay.
We will explain that. We do have a checklist that I'm going to send out that kind of goes through each of the little points that they need to know because they're not going to, in that letter, they're not going to know why theirs is not compliant. They're just going to know that it's not compliant. And so this little checklist will give them that they can go and say, okay, this is why it's not visible from both road, directions or whatever.
Okay,
Mine's probably an anomaly here, because mine's at the head of the road,
right up there.
but my house is 100 yards from the mailbox,
Right.
so I have to mark the house also.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. The Summer people, What address do we have in our records for the summer people that, when we sent that out, if it's not, they're not here yet, will it go to their?
You know, in order to, get the official notice of violation started, we have to notify them. And what we're gonna have to do is for each address, we'll send a letter to that address, as well as we'll have to look it up on the property assessor's map and see who the registered property owner is, and send a letter to that person as well.
Okay.
So it's basically 2 letters will go out for each violation. Hopefully that will get the notice out. The only other option really is either to send out a certified letter or to post the property, but posting the property really wouldn't be ideal at this situation because we're gonna have so many, we just have postings all the way down, down certain streets and that sort of thing.
And will
We
we,
use the water bill address, don't we?
You can use water bill, you can use the club news.
Yeah.
A lot of those people that aren't your year-round residents belong to the club, and they come up here in the summertime.
And we've done that, but
Yeah, I'll have to check on
with all
what,
with all the pre-work we've done, I'm disappointed that we're finding that the officers are finding a really low compliance.
yeah,
Because we did a lot of work a couple of years ago with all those brochures. With that notice of violation, would it be a good idea to send the Help Us Help You with the notice of violation? Or can we not do that?
in what regard?
Well, to ease the.
Oh, you're talking about the letter?
I mean, well, one of my questions is gonna be is how much negative feedback have we gotten? Well, we haven't done anything yet. We haven't pushed the nest yet,
Yeah.
poked it.
We will try to give them as much information as possible. If you think it would be beneficial to include our original letter, that might be a good idea to talk about. That talks about, help us help you because this is a matter of safety and that's why we're making this push.
My personal opinion is that, you received this letter before, so, you have already received this notification, and I'm sure you've seen this brochure. Attached is the official notice of violation.
Yeah.
what's the time limit on
My thinking is we'll probably give them 90 days.
90 days?
Just because of the number that we're going to have, and then that will, if we start sending those out next month, or that'll give the summer residents time to get up here and make arrangements, hopefully, for that. The code just says that we have to give reasonable time, but I thought, we typically do 30 days, but 90 days seems more appropriate in this situation.
Sure.
March, April, May, most of them come
Sure.
in, most of them start coming back in May. So,
Yeah.
if you need any help with fine tuning that letter or something like that, just call me and I will
Okay.
be glad to come and help on it, because this project's 3 years old now.
Yeah, we've been working on this since I've been here.
And one thing we can say is, I don't know if we'd want to say that or not, but we'd say, the town of Beech Mountain has for years been a little lax in its enforcement of code. We started with the building codes. So it really didn't affect the homeowners that much, but it certainly did impact on all the builders. And as a result, what would you say, Robbie? What's the compliance now?
I mean, it's very detailed. No, it's good. Better. A lot better than it used to be. For building, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. And we, kind of cushion them into it a little bit. I'm sure there's still, we'll get some irate phone calls, but, hey, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else have any comments on the addressing posting plan?
You said 3 years, just to update you, it's probably be more like 6 or 8 years. It would take-
Well, the problem, yeah, but we started addressing it
Yeah.
heavily 3 years ago with, when we surveyed the whole town as a group of
No, we-
EMS and emergency medical personnel. Okay. Any other comments? Let's move on to the zoning chapter updates.
Yes, I attended the workshop for the updates of the Chapter 160B. What I found is there's gonna be a lot of text updates in our code. There's a lot of sort of administrative stuff that we'll probably have to address. What I'd like to do is just, I'll come through with a group of these as we get to them. I'd like to have the bulk of the amendments done by June, July timeframe. And then that way we can get that done and then go back through and see if there's anything else that we need to address. What I will look at is ones, I think I give you a checklist in your packet. That checklist, I'm basically going to look at the must-haves that need to be done. I'll bring to you anything that's questionable or is policy-related. If it's sort of administrative or text or fairly innocuous, I won't have to bring sort of language to you beforehand, but we'll have to take those amendments to you for recommendation to council, and then council will have to adopt them. I'd like to not make any type of, what I'd like to do is try to keep separate the just sort of basic changes, and then if there are any type of policy changes that we need to look at, we do that separate. Just because when I take it to council, we have the public hearing, I'd like to say this is not changing the code at all, it's just changing sort of how it's worded or where it's located or sort of references. Then if there's any sort of policy changes, then we could take that separate and discuss anything that changes the policy.
But aren't there some cases where the back of this, well done, thank you very much, document, the back of the book is the states, the front of the book is Beach Mountain.
It is.
And aren't there some that are going to create a change in the wording?
There's certainly a lot, like one of them is we call a conditional use permit. The state says you can no longer use that term, we have to use special use permit. So we're gonna change that.
Okay.
There are some other changes, like the one that we talked about was the minimum square footage on houses. The state has, and it's not officially part of 160D, but it was something that was enacted this past legislative season. The state says you can't have that minimum house size. So we're going to look at that separately, and how we go about addressing that and all that we'll bring to this body and talk about.
Did you say minimum house size?
Yes.
I guess that's to come up with these new mini houses.
I think it
Sure,
was,
so
and
far,
it was sort of to address that, and, but, you know, I don't know the history of it here, but I've always used the minimum house size for certain zoning districts. A lot of times it's to protect property values and that sort of thing. But in talking to local jurisdictions, a lot of people don't have that, so I'm not sure what others are going to be doing, so I'm trying to find what other options or what other routes there are to protect property values in areas where we would like to do that without, you know, the big push right now is for affordable housing, and so a lot of communities are looking at ways they can create affordable housing. And that may not be our issue here, so being a resort community, because we don't have a lot of people that work here or live here and work here. There's a smaller group of those, but that we may need to create some areas where affordable housing is appropriate, but still keep the protections for the higher end areas to protect property values. Any questions on that? I know I kind of got off on what we were talking about, but the policy, there are going to be some policy changes or considerations that we need to talk about, and then there are going to be some things that are pretty standard and not not important. I don't, it's just kind of rewording or changing our ordinance just to fit what the state's having us to do.
Okay.
So this is ongoing.
It will be, and I provided you in your binder. I know that some of you don't have our zoning ordinance, but it's in there. It's also online if anybody is more comfortable using that. The first section of it is the basically the planning board basics, charter in our code of ordinances for the planning board, your responsibilities, that sort of thing. The second section, like the chairman said, is our zoning ordinance, what is in our code right now as it stands. And then the back section is what the state adopted that says that affects our ability to enact zoning. We have to comply with that section of the state general statutes. So we just need to update our zoning ordinance to reflect what the state did.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is other business. John, do you have any other business?
I got no.
Peter?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we bring up the zoning of Shane Park again, please.
Second that.
Third.
We have a motion to bring back up the zoning of Shane Park, and a second by John Hoffman. So it's open for discussion.
All right. Well, this has been weighing pretty heavily on me since this Shane Park deal started. First thing I'd like to say to everybody that I am not saying this in malice or because I do not like anybody here in this town. I think everybody does a great job. I think we have possibly carried this Shane Park deal to another level, and this other level could create some bad things down the road, okay? Now, when Shane Park was first given to Beach Mountain by Dr. Shane, which is a friend of mine, a great guy, I believe the stipulation was, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm gonna give this land to you, but you have to make a park on it.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
I'm not as familiar
Well,
with it either.
When all that happened, I mean, that's great, okay, a park. Our parks consist of trails, picnic tables, place to have a picnic lunch in a park. Somehow this has grown so giant and out of perspective for where this piece of land sits. I feel the need to act. We now have tents, campsites, fire pits, buildings, concrete foundation, sewage, power, everything else running down there, proposed to run down there, to this lot that is basically on the side of our drinking water. Okay? Well, the city has put together several zoning acts and the protection of Buckeye lands itself and the recreational lands around it. We've seen to not think about, again, where this is at. Most towns that have reservoirs protect these reservoirs with tooth and nail. For instance, the city of Greenville, South Carolina, their reservoir, they bought up all the land that leads into their reservoir and is restricted to go on to. There's another reservoir right outside of Concord, North Carolina, called Cottle Creek Reservoir. It is highly restricted. You can't boat on it, you can't swim in it, you can't get around the edges of it, you can't build around the edges of it. Now, let's think, why would they do this? Because they're protecting their drinking water, okay? It says in our long-term planning that we just got through going through and reconditioning for the last couple of years. In several areas of this long-term, that we need to protect our resources, that we need to buy small parcels that are unbuildable, small parcels that are that can be bought on the sides of these ponds and creeks, which lead into our only reservoir on Beach Mountain. Now we're fixing to put a full-blown park on the side of our drinking water, which I have witnessed myself, that entire piece of property being 4 feet underwater before. Now that happens again, where's all that going to? It's going directly into our drinking water. I'm not saying Shane Park is a bad idea. I'm saying Shane Park as a park with a simple hiking trail, a few picnic tables, and let it be. This is sacred land down there, people. This isn't something to play around with. Other towns don't play around with it like this. Matter of fact, the National Park Service, okay, which the National Park Service probably has pretty good knowledge on land and what to do and what not to do on it. Do you know the National Park Service has a stated law, I guess, or rule that says you cannot even disturb land within 100 feet of any of their streams or rivers. Okay? I think they probably know land pretty good. Why we are going down there to this piece of property and doing this, because of, I ask myself why all the time. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea for everybody that doesn't even know where Beach Mountain is right now, that is going to come to Beach Mountain. I'm doing this for us, for them. Somebody has to speak out here. This is a bad idea for all this stuff going down there. It just doesn't make sense. We've got a WS2 watershed on that area, okay, which is a half-mile radius. And in that WS2, it states that, you know, there's not supposed to be camping. So we went back and we made it where we can camp down there, okay? It also says that the park that's in that area has to be closed at nighttime. Okay, so how are you going to close the camping area and get them back out of there and say, why is it camping area when it has to be closed at nighttime? Okay, we've got a lot of contradicting things that are in place here, but the number one thing that everybody should remember, this is our drinking water. This isn't just a pond that's out in the middle of the woods. This supplies this town with drinking water. That is opening up the door to more things being done to dirty our drinking water, to deplete. What else are we going to do? If something happens down there and it's undrinkable, now where are we at? Just because we wanted to put in an overdue fancy Dollywood park down there? I heard there was going to be a water feature where the kids can play in it and that water runs directly into the stream, which is 300 feet down, runs directly into our lake. Well, I got told that it's okay because it doesn't run directly into the lake. Okay? Well, anybody with any common sense will say, yes, it does run directly into the lake. Why would you want something like that? Why would you want to build something on a low floodplain that can be washed away right in, and we're not talking about $50,000. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money that's fixing to do this. There's a lot of people that I've talked to that are against this, but they're not going to come out publicly and say it. Well, I feel that the time is now, before it gets going any further, to really relook at what we're doing here. Are we doing this to, I don't know why we would do this on top of our drinking water. That land should be buffer land, not building land. 2 or 3 years ago, there was Genesis Wildlife on that for many years. Well, the town decided that we wanted Genesis Wildlife off that because it was endangering our drinking water. Eventually, it cost us, but they had to leave. 2 years later, what do? You can pick up a rock and throw it to the piece of property that we want to build on that. Well, this doesn't even make any sense. If we want to do a full-blown park, there's plenty of places that the town owns to do a nice park like they want to do it, but not on the side of our drinking water. The common sense has gone out the window there. After all said and done, I think we should think about rezoning, which we just did, to PSC to give us all these leadways to build all this crazy stuff down there. We should rezone this back into a conservation class piece of property. Go to Dr. Shane, I will, and explain to him that we're glad that you gave us that property. And we'll put a park on it, a simple park that leaves very little footprint because this is on the side of our drinking water. Okay? I think we should not let this go to the side. I say we should probably talk about this again at the next meeting. If you would like, just to see where this board stands, we can take a quick vote to see if we would change it back to a conservation.
Yeah, you can poll your fellow board members, or you can make a motion to rezone, or if you want to do that at a later date. This board sets the agenda, so if there's anything that you would like on the agenda, it just needs the majority of the board to say, we'll hear that. I will say that I have on the council agenda this afternoon a motion to ask for a public hearing to amend some of these things that you're talking about in that Buckeye Lake Protection Plan. So that is an issue that has been identified, and council is going to hear it, or at least they're going to have the choice to hear it. This board is an advisory board, and you can recommend to council whatever policy you feel is appropriate, if you think changes to the PSC to restrict it to a certain type of park, or to not allow camping, or whatever it is that you think is appropriate for a zoning district, you can also make a motion to rezone it. This board, you're the council's advisor on development, on growth. And so, this board would have to make that recommendation to council, or however this board decides to go about it. But those are kind of your options on how to proceed. I think this project is fairly down the road, so if there is a large concern by the majority of this board, I think sooner rather than later is going to be, and I'm not sure, what commitments were made with Dr. Shane or what, or I'm not familiar with that. I know that some, or at least it was my understanding that some agreement was made when we accepted that property. But yeah, so those are kind of the options going forward if you guys feel like you want to go that route.
All right. Well, then I'd like to make a motion to take a vote to continue this.
Okay.
To continue discussing it?
Yes, to continue discussion of the zoning of Shane Park and the planned building of everything that's going to be on that piece of property.
Well, we're in that phase right now. It is open. So any other members welcome to comment on it.
I agree with Peter. I think it needs looking at badly. I thought about it from the first day that they started.
Mr. Chairman, 'cause I'm new, but we talk about things done can't be undone. And if this is, it sounds like there's a valid discussion point about protecting our drinking water. So I would certainly like to see a hold on that. And of course, we're just an advisory role here. And I don't have any knowledge of where the process is about commercializing this property. And I do know Dr. Shane. And do we have title to this property, the town, or what?
Yes, I believe it was deeded to the town, has become part of the Buckeye property. I don't know if there was any agreement that it would be deeded back if it didn't become a part. I'm not sure about that, but I do believe we have taken title of
It
it.
sounds like Dr. Shane, that was his hope.
Yes.
I'll give you this property, but make sure that it provides a park.
Correct.
A park can be defined by anything, but if we start commercializing it, I don't think we undefine that. So I would say certainly pause and look at it. And, I need a lot of education on this, but I would be for, what is your motion to withhold our advice until a certain time, or what?
Your motion was to open the discussion
On the zoning of Shane
There
Park.
was no, the zoning of Shane Park.
I support that.
I support Peter.
All right. I have one question. Even though it is rezoned PS2,
Correct.
but you
PS.
said PSC.
PSC.
C, yes.
Okay, I just remember PS, Public Service.
Mm-hmm.
It is still, regardless of how it's zoned, if it's in a WS2 watershed, it has to comply with those regulations. I think where we need to look is before we say we need to change it back from PSC to, was it R1?
It was a residential zoning before.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was R1 or R2, but it was.
I just remember, I'm pretty sure it was one of the Rs. uh, Zoning it back to R1 doesn't really change anything somebody who owned it could do to it.
No, I think
So what Peter's saying is, okay, I'm saying maybe we don't have to rezone it, but we can certainly bring to the forefront that, hey, it's in WS2, you can't have camping in there.
well,
I don't know if that's been,
Well, right now,
it's a good, it's,
right now in our Buckeye Lake Protection Act, it says in there it's no camping,
it does. Yes,
okay?
yes.
There was probably a reason behind that. Probably a pretty good reason.
Yes.
well, the ones you already stated, in the statement about the reason that they didn't want Genesis there. My particular, if you've got 75 feet of drainage, of soil drainage, you're going to clear, and I'm not sure if in our ordinances, we're not already at 100 feet or something of a stream.
It's
I know
currently,
75 feet will clean it.
currently there's a 30-foot minimum buffer on streams, and for low density, what we call low density development, which restricts it to about 6% impervious area. If you go over that, they consider it high density, and you're required to have a 100-foot buffer. And those rules, those watershed rules are taken from the state rules. We are given certain enforcement rights from the state over those watersheds based on the fact that we have that in our code. If we change that section of code, it would have to go to the state for approval. I'm
Well,
sure they would
that-
approve something more intensive, but, no, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I'm sure they would look more favorably on something more restrictive.
Okay. The PSC, I'm not sure, to me, you just put it under the town's prerogative as to what they were gonna do with it. The town still has to stay within the watershed laws and the others. And we have a council meeting this afternoon, which some of this is gonna be brought up. I think we keep, let's pass your motion to continue to keep the discussion open. And that was unanimous. I don't know if.
Did we get a second on that?
Huh?
Did we get a
John
second?
second. And Larry and Robbie and I concurred that we're not saying to change it, you're saying we need to discuss it. So because I'm not sure we're gonna have to change it. And when I find out we do have to, then I'll be fully supportive of that. But
Well,
I
basically,
think it's interpretation and the restrictions that can be applied to it. And those have to come from,
Is there open access to this property? Like, could I go down now
yes.
and walk around on it?
Sure.
if you notice too on that property right now, there's, the big trench that's been cut down there. It looks like a big, usually when you
The trench,
start moving land, especially on a piece of property like that, you'd have a silk fence or something.
well, wait a minute, the trench, when did this get done?
What's that trench for down there?
It's for the well pipe that goes to the lake.
Right.
Yeah, instead of having the fountain in the stream and the whole thing they were gonna do, they're just gonna pump it right into the stream, right?
That-
let it grab you for?
The water feature's been,
Right. It's, that was your first statement about the water feature, and I was saying, hey, that didn't exist anymore anyway.
yeah, and what I'm saying is I don't think we need to have the footprint that we're gonna put down there. A park, fine. Trail, picnic tables, no overnight deal, no,
I'd say no
There are a lot
no
of
commercial.
cities, this much I will argue with you, I'm just for the sake of arguing with you. There are a lot of cities who do develop parks alongside their watersheds. But it's smart development, it's protective development. City of High Point has a huge park on a whole peninsula of Oak Hollow Lake. But it's a heck of a lot bigger body of water.
and is that
But
their, is that
so-
their only body of water that they draw out of? Well, they have
City of High Point?
several sources.
I think their backup is probably, I can't remember the name, it's been 50 years since I really read it.
Right. What I'm saying is this is our drinking water right here.
Well, I'm
Well,
not
having
saying,
backup.
I'm not saying that we don't keep this discussion going. I think we need to listen to what the council says today. We've heard what we're saying in here. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks
Right,
to continue this discussion.
all right.
And I think we'll, in that 2 weeks, we'll probably hear a lot more about this if enough of the public has been listening to this and watching. We're on TV, aren't we?
Well,
We should get some feedback.
okay.
All right.
I think it should be considered, highly considered.
Okay.
It seems to me like this is a classic example of an advisory group of people to look at what's happening and think about it and give advice to the folks that have the authority to do whatever is done, right?
Correct.
And that is our function. Right?
I'm really for it.
Any other business that you have?
No.
Robbie? I have none. Our next meeting is February 25th at 9 a.m. I know it's only 2 weeks, but we're getting back on schedule. Chair will accept a motion to adjourn.
Got it?
John Hoffman,
Second?
second by Robbie, motion adjourned. Motion to adjourn passed.
What a feature. Where's Tom from that go?